Ooh, that feeling.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. It's 7 o'clock. I'd like to go ahead and get the meeting started with our call to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We have a full house tonight. There's some additional seating over here if y'all want to spread out. It is the 5th of December already, 7 o'clock, 2022. Tonight we have myself, Steve Dunn, Harry Shaker, Marcia Marion, and our town council, Barbara Schellenberg, available for us this evening, as well as Ginny Giovannielli. And before I do get into the meat of the agenda, I do want to point out that this is Ginny's last Board of Selectmen meeting after a very many years, I should say. She's been through 8 administrations here at Town Hall, so well, I wanted to move this to the beginning because I figured it'd thin out by the end of the meeting, and since we have a captive audience, I do want to go ahead and just recognize you, Ginny, and give Ginny a very warm round of applause.
If I may.
Just a small token on behalf of us for you this evening. We're gonna miss you, Ginny. Yeah, it's very bittersweet. I don't know if Harry and Steve want to say anything or anyone else in the room. But.
Sure. It's there's two things. There's kind of two definitions to an anchor. One is something that just holds you down in not such a good sense, but the other is an anchor for support and stability. And Ginny has just always been there. I think very few people understand the scope of work that she does beyond what she's supposed to be doing. And we're always greeted with a smile, and she's going to be sorely missed. I certainly understand, being 20 years in public eye, that at some point it's time to kind of enjoy your private time. So, Jenny, thank you very much for everything. You couldn't have asked for a better person to be running our office. You're welcome.
There's not much to add, but I would say, in my 40 years of business, I have had many assistants, many aides, many people working for me, and I have never in my entire career had someone as capable and as competent and qualified as Ginny. Her ability, her knowledge, her skills, her ability to help everyone. And what I think we're gonna miss the most is your knowledge of the past. That, we tried that 15 years ago and that didn't go so good. And Ginny has just been a jewel in this town's employment, and she is going to be hard to replace. Thank you, Ginny, for everything you've done for us.
Thank you. And this is not goodbye. She's here for a few more weeks, and we will be having a farewell party on the 21st at 1:30. So if you didn't know it. So more to follow on that as we get our announcement out. But I just did want to take that time, so thank you guys for chiming in, and thank you very much, Ginny. Oh, okay. So moving right along, I do also want to move the agenda around a little bit, so I'd like to make a motion to move Marcia Marion to the top of the agenda for the evening. Before public comment, there is a Charter Revision Commission meeting upstairs that just started at 7 o'clock as well, and Marcia can't be in 2 places at once, even though some probably think she can. I would say she could, but can I get a second on that?
I'll second it.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, you received the financial report for the expenditures. It's been a tricky year with a lot of changes that we do budget adjustments quarterly. And the next time we'll do them is in January, but you have our thoughts of what we know so far, of where we stand, where we have the overages and shortages. The good news is that with the price of gas dropping, we'll be locking that in December. We should be able to come to you next month, and we have budget meetings with the department heads next week, but finding out anything there, we should be able to come to you next month with a balanced transfers and no need for any additional appropriations for the town side. Revenues are doing well. That I'm just reviewing that report from last month now. That interest seems to still be the great thing. That when we established our budget, interest rates are at 0.1%, and now they're at 3.97%. So we're happy about that. Any questions on the financial report?
I'm all set. I didn't have any.
I don't at this time.
All right, if you do, you know where to find me.
That all you have? for
That's
tonight,
it.
Marcia? All right, so looking at transfers for January. Thank you so much. Okay, and back to public comment. Do you have a list tonight?
Yes. All right.
Joan Paulson?
I'd just like to remind you, you have 3 minutes if you're in the middle of a sentence, so I'll just kind of give you a wave, and if you can just wrap up. Thank you.
Joan Polson, 16 Twilight Lane. I'm here to talk about the proposed tower for Vale Road, the cell tower. There's some people in our community that are asking that we do not allow that to be built in our town, mainly because of the lack of safety to the people that live nearby. And also, I have a map here I'd like to give to the first select lady that shows that that tower, proposed tower, is less than a mile away from one that already exists, which is against our zoning regulations. It is 2,030 feet away, and a mile is 5,280 feet. I would like also to mention that there's a lot involved with this tower in terms of providing antennas for our police and fire chiefs. And ironically, I came across an article on Physicians for Safe Technology about a firehouse that had a tower on it in California, and some of the symptoms and neurological problems that the firefighters developed. And they were actually tested with SPECT scans to assess changes in the brain, and the results revealed a pattern of abnormal changes which were concentrated over a wider area than would normally be seen in the brains of individuals exposed to toxic inhalation, as might be expected from fighting fires. And the conclusions were that the 6 firefighters that slept there and were exposed to it, they started to feel symptoms actually immediately, and they had delayed reaction time, lack of impulse control, and difficulty maintaining focus, which is not good for firefighters, and it's not good for everybody else either. So we're trying to protect the people who live right near Vale Road, very close, from having another tower put up that we don't feel is necessary. And we would also like the emergency agencies to consider finding a better way to put up whatever they need to put up. There is a tower along the highway on 84 that is just a tower, and it has some kind of antenna at the top, and I can't see why we need a cell tower, which will end up having maybe 20 or 30 other antennas on it from all the different providers, and that's it.
Yo, you can finish if you're in the middle of the sentence. You don't have to stop.
Well, I'm trying to go on, so.
Well, thank you very
I'm
much.
just going to give you this and a copy of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
All right, next speaker, Joe Piscatelli.
Hi, good evening. My name is Joe Piscatelli. I live on Parkwood Drive in Brookfield. I oppose the project to erect a monopole cell tower on 60 Val Road. First, there is an issue regarding the distance from Farnco Chemical Company that parks their tanker train cars there and the proposed tower site. The Farnco tanker train cars contained, from what I understand, alcohol. The railroad tracks are just 54 feet away from the proposed tower, where the proposed tower is to be placed. And the tower's height is 165 feet tall. Even with the hinge point that they talk of at the siting council in New Britain, 124 foot, it's still 124 foot elevation. In the event of a catastrophe or failure, there is still a potential for a fire and or an explosion. The second is when the Connecticut Siting Council requested for the deficiency in signal strength, the answer from the AT&T was that it does not meet that threshold. AT&T used an arbitrary number and called it their threshold. The answer should be in numerical form, and there should be a documentation that the device that was used was calibrated, and the information should be posted and clarified. And the third thing is pertaining to the first responders' request for a new digital system for their communication. The town of Brookfield, through a referendum, voted and granted $5.9 million for this project. What happened to the appropriations for the first responders tower? Also, as far as placing for the tower communication, the tower should be placed closer to the center of town, not on the southernmost portion of the town. There's going to be a problem up there, in the northern part then. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andy Kane.
Thanks. Andy Kame. I live at 5 Fernbrook Drive in Brookfield. And I just had two comments on two of the items that are coming up tonight for discussion. One is the fire rescue and ambulances emergency services study. I'd just like to point out that I was a member of the Brookfield Fire Department many years ago, and we also faced a problem similar to this one, but with the ambulance. At that time, a group of folks at the fire department sat down and met and figured a better way to do things, and that was through billing, soft billing, charging for ambulance calls. And so as a result of that, the basic problem was that they were unable to meet the calls in a timely fashion. There's an 8-minute call requirement from the time the call gets into responding to the call. And they were unable to meet that because we didn't have the staffing, and we were doing it with volunteers. So that program, that project, was handled internally at no cost to the town. And what we ended up doing was charging for EMS calls, and that allowed us to hire full-time paid EMTs and full-time paid paramedics. And so we were able to basically revolutionize the program in Brookfield. So before any large amount of money is spent or on RFPs and studies and design groups, I would urge the town of Brookfield to form a small committee to take a look at this. Many other towns have faced this problem in Connecticut. We're one of 169 towns. Trumbull has done an excellent job with their fire department. They do charge a fire tax. They do have people who live there. They do have fire department folks who are on staff 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, waiting for the call to come in. That's just one town among 169. I'm sure if we were to pull together and look at this ourselves before spending any kind of money, we could certainly come up with a list of improvements, a list of things that would help out. It may include a fire tax. It may not. I don't know. I don't want to jump to any conclusions. Secondly, I just want to talk about the center school repurposing. They're going to discuss a ad hoc report that appeared to be in August 1st of 2020. Obviously, whatever numbers were in there have dramatically changed. Everything's changed. I do want to call to everyone's attention the fact that we were down this road once before on building a new library, and it was basically voted down by the town. I don't really see that anything has changed since then. We do have significant other priorities in this town. As you mentioned, we have an EMS problem, fire problem. We also have the situation with the emergency communication system. We've borrowed a ton of money. I would just urge caution before spending any more money. And if there's any way that we can do this stuff internally with a bunch of folks, this town has a tremendous amount of talent in terms of very well educated, very knowledgeable, very professional people. I think a lot of those folks would be willing to develop their time or donate their time to help us out. Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Andy.
Thank you.
Pronouncing this right, Natalie? Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Nadia Nikeev, 16 Obtuse Rocks. I'm basically here to thank Tara, you for giving more light to the issue of the tower, for your Facebook post, for whatever interviews you had to give, because I think it just brings more people's attention to the issue. We're all are busy, and while it might seem that not many of us, but I believe that if any parent or any actually person would read the studies that were done on EMF radiation, on how much the towers and the cell phones and everything else affects the health. If people would to take time, they would also go support the cause against the towers. And I feel it's important and easier to put the time and effort now as opposed to take it down later when it's already affecting people and when it's already in place and money was spent, and just would be much harder to take it down. So thank you. I just wanted to express my appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And one more, Warren Shear.
Hello, my name's Warren Scher. I reside close to the proposed cell tower site, which I strongly do oppose for many factors. One, we have health reasons. It is near, secondly, it's near hazardous rail containers, cargo. It's near the railroad tracks, reduced property value, loud excessive generator startups. Cell service is pretty good in Brookfield to begin with, and I don't believe it's within the allowed distance from the other cell towers. Thank you.
Thank you, Warren. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, for your public comment. Our first presentation this evening will be from Mr. Dombowski. There you are, Greg.
Oh, we're gonna switch
Switch what?
with the.
Hello.
Oh, does that need to happen? I wasn't aware
What
of
Greg
that.
had offered.
If you'd like.
Would the
'cause we have
library
so many
rather go
I'm
first?
happy to go second. We have so many.
Does the study want to go first? Either way.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Greg. Could have been out of here sooner.
So I make a motion that we swap the presentations.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we have a presentation by Jesselie Pineda and Cassie Dunn. Hi. Hi.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you tonight. My name is Cassie Dunn. I'm a member of the Brookfield Parks and Recreation Committee, and I've lived in Brookfield for 39 years. I'd like to introduce Jesselie Pineda. She's the chair of the new library committee, and she's also a Brookfield resident for 15 years. We're so happy to be here this evening. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to come before you. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the supporters of this project that are here with us this evening. Would you all please stand up? Thank you very
The whole
much.
room.
Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you. We appreciate the support.
I felt the earth move.
Thank you for your work on this
Under my
project
feet.
in the past and your continuing work on behalf of the people of Brookfield. Earlier this year, the Board of Selectmen charged the Parks and Recreation Department and the new library committee to interview and work with a consultant to consider the different options for repurposing the center school location when it's vacated July 1st, 2023. We've met extensively to collaborate on adapting the space to both of our needs. We're here tonight to give you background on the work that's been done so far and what we hope to accomplish for the town of Brookfield going forward. Jesselie.
Perfect. So a little bit of history. How did we get here? So the Board of Selectmen appointed this
the Center School Ad Hoc Committee to explore the highest and best use of the center school facility, as it was no longer going to be used or needed as an instructional space. The ad hoc committee recommended the following, and I quote, "The Brookfield Library and the Parks and Recreation Department joint use of the center school facilities would allow each entity to better realize their program capabilities and greatly enhance the perception of Brookfield as a desirable place to live, raise a family, and retire." It also recommended that the community organizations would also have the opportunity to continue and expand their programming. Thus, the return to the taxpayer would be significant. Okay. And lastly, they recommended to engage a design professional to develop a plan and estimate supporting the conversion of the center school location to a library and parks and recreation facility, as well as plan an estimate for tear down and construction of a new building for similar use. So naturally, the next step was for the town to hire a consultant to conduct a feasibility study for the use of center school for the library and the Parks and Recreation Department. Several members of the library board, Parks and Rec Commission, and the NBC worked together to interview several consultants. A consultant was hired, and we performed a walkthrough and examination of the existing structure this past summer. Okay? The previous reports and drawings were also made available to the consultant.
And as we continue to work with the consultant, we're considering the following options: a full restoration of the existing structure, a full demolition of the structure, and a partial demolition of the structure. Over the last 6 months, we've had several meetings with the consultant, individually, by department, and collectively, and with the municipal building committee to collaborate on this feasibility study. The feasibility study should be completed by the end of this year. This collaboration between Parks and Recreation Department and the library has allowed us a more in-depth understanding of the individual needs of the department and what we consider might be the needs and wants of the community. In addition to their own needs, the department heads of Parks and Recreation and the library are currently reviewing spaces that can be combined to meet the needs of the community during different times of the day. This would be, for example, meeting rooms and large community gathering spaces. Currently, the department heads are compiling lists of their must-have needs for the space in the building, their should-have spaces, and nice-to-have spaces. This information will lay the groundwork for the next phase of the project. In addition, both departments have put thought into what kind of programs can be run at the center school location beginning July 2023. We understand budgets are due mid-January, and we want the library and Parks and Recreation to be considered as users of the building beginning January 2023. We don't want to miss this window of opportunity to be considered in the upcoming budget process.
July,
January,
January.
July, sorry, July 2023, when it's vacated by the school system. We would appreciate your recommendation on how that should be handled.
So next steps, obviously, is to complete the work with the consultant. As Cassie stated before, the feasibility study should be completed by the end of this month. But also, we want to look to you for your recommendations. Our goal is to get as much community input as possible. We would like to ask for your recommendation. Who else should we present this to so we can all be aligned as a community every single step of the way, okay? And the next step is hiring a consultant for phase 2 in this process. The consultant to date has confirmed the findings of the Center School Ad Hoc Committee's report. The center school location will be the appropriate site for the library and Parks and Recreation facility. Again, we all agree we want as much community input as possible. And in order to move forward, we will need to interview and hire a consultant. This next step will allow us to have invaluable feedback from the community on their vision for the center school location going forward. It will also allow the consultant to collect all the data and present several designs and costs to bringing this idea to fruition. We are asking for your support throughout the budget process of our capital request for these services. This step is vital for us to move forward and for us to complete our commitment to our community.
Nicely done, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And finally.
We have one more.
Hold on.
Slides.
Lastly, we want to say thank you. Many thanks to all the volunteers and employees of the town for working together to bring this project to our community. This is an amazing opportunity to create a state-of-the-art community center that will not only house the library and Parks and Recreation, but would serve everyone in the town of Brookfield. We look forward to moving this project into the next phase. Thank you very much.
All right.
Now we're done.
So, can I start?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Who was the consultant? Just so it's on record.
Yes, Doyle Coffin.
And you said it'll be done, he or she or they will be done by the end of the year?
Yes.
So will it come in a written form, or will they come back to present to the public, or how are we gonna get the results of the study?
So what I was envisioning for something like this was we were going to wrap up the study and then meet again with the MBC and the library board and the Parks and Rec Commission, so that then we can then present again to you.
Okay, so what's the timeline for that?
I don't have a timeline just yet. I could get you some dates.
Well, if we're gonna be talking about the budget and moving into the next cycle, and you're gonna be looking for, forget what the last bullet said, but I think a financial commitment for phase 2.
Correct.
I kinda need to know, like, what's next before you come to ask for money.
Well, I think we have to come together with the results of this, and we're 80% there.
Okay.
So, I think probably the next meeting, but I think that would be right before. I know that the money has been submitted into the budget now for this next request, for the next phase. So we're basically looking for support, either, now or then.
So what is that ask? I'm sorry, how much?
It's $125,000, I believe, for the next phase of the study, which would be pre-referendum. We go over the structure of the building.
It's
in
all
the
phase
focal
2.
group. It's all phase 2.
Yeah, can we fill out what phase 2 would include a little bit, just for the public?
So, yeah, so it would be similar to what was done for the new school. There would be focus groups, question and answers, surveys, town meetings, and we get a much greater grasp on the structure of the building, the needs. Oh, thank you. Okay. Pre-referendum services, it costs us.
Thank you, Paul.
So, thank you very much. So, where do we begin?
So it's architectural programming and pre-design. Programming shall incorporate and refine the building program produced by the Brookfield Library staff and also the Parks and Rec Department. Architect shall analyze detailed information about the existing site, utilities provided by the town to include a survey and
Topographic information.
Yep. The firm should prepare preliminary plans and schematic drawings, including as a minimum sketches showing the proposed external and internal configuration of the building and allocation of space by function and placement of furniture, equipment, completion. So it's a more in-depth study about how we can actually use the space.
Okay, would this give us, we know that there are some issues with Center School already. It's a very old building. Will this phase 2 look at all of those? I know Tecton came in when we did the new school, and they did a study, but that was 8 years ago. Will phase 2 include looking at the building and saying, okay, this is possible, this is not, this has to be fixed, this doesn't? Will it,
It is my understanding that that would be included in phase 2.
and will that include a cost estimate of the entire project?
I believe.
New library,
Yes.
community center?
Sorry, I'm looking at Paul.
I mean, ballpark.
It says right here, please, let's let the professional.
Who are you,
Wait.
young?
I'm sorry. And if you wouldn't mind, I'm still stuck on phase 1. What exactly is happening right now? So if you could step us, I know you said they're looking at doing a full demo, a remodel, or a rebuild.
That is what has all been considered. But that is not our decision to make. That will ultimately be the decision made by the town and in the next phase. This was just an overview in this RPF to see if the space could be combined for the use of a Parks and Recreation facility and the new library. That's all the RFP was.
Yeah, take it as a proof of concept. We engaged Doyle Coffin to prove out the findings of the ad hoc committee to say, can this building, is it feasible for a center school in one way, shape, or form to be converted to accommodation, parks and rec, and library? What are the spatial needs of both departments? How can we best combine some of those needs to fit it on this site? And what would a draft estimate look like for any of the three options? And that's what Doyle Coffin has done to date. We're refining it at our last joint meeting with the new library committee and Parks and Rec. We had very much an in-depth discussion as to how can we best combine spaces to get the most utilization. If the library committee wants a big box space and the Parks and Rec committee wants a big box space, how do we look at schedules and refine scheduling so we're not building two identical spaces that are only going to be used up to a part-time? How do we look at that to get one space and schedule all the programs better to get the most utilization out of the smallest footprint? And that's really what we've gone back to with Doyle Coffin and Tracy and Mary are doing, is looking at where we can combine these things. Again, it's how do you get the best bang for your buck?
So
Can-
phase,
can-
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Can you define or just explain, like, when you say a cost estimate, what are we talking about when you say cost estimate?
Estimate of probable cost of construction.
So that will be in the second phase, the first phase?
We have that in the first phase. It's a rough order of magnitude for any of the three options. As Jessie stated before, one is complete tear down.
Right.
One is, a partial repurpose, and one is repurpose the whole building, meaning renovate as new, the term we use for the state school projects.
Yeah.
And that information will be in when we,
Phase one.
right, in the phase one,
Right.
okay.
Phase two starts to focus this down and funnel this down. We get more in-depth information. And much like we did on the school project, we have these round tables and we have these public forums where we do the pinups, like we did at Huckleberry last time.
Yeah.
We had a lot of community input. You take three options, you get the community input, you funnel it down to two, you do it again, you funnel it down to one. We have a third presentation where we have community input, and at that point, the architect is charged with what is the hard cost of construction, what are the soft costs, what is your total bond referendum value, and what are you getting for it? And that's what takes us up to that point, pre-referendum, or the point of going out to ask the Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, supporting that bond, and then ultimately putting it before the voters. So at the end of phase two, the answer is yes, you'll have a schematic plan. Yes, you'll have an estimate of construction costs, both hard and soft, and you'll have a presentation for the public for them to make a decision on whether or not they want a project like this to proceed or not. And we did the same thing with the first library.
Yeah, I just have to say, having been part of the process, Harry, you were part of it. With the new school, this process worked incredibly well, because option one sucked. But it really did, getting the public involved, getting the town involved, and some really good ideas came out of those public meetings, that were incorporated into the overall design. Not all of them were, but a lot of them were.
No, and we get a chance to hear from the public really what they want. I mean, we can send out all the surveys in the world that we want. We'll gather information that way, because sometimes people don't answer the surveys. And they'll come and they'll say, I was at Monroe Library, I was at New York Public Library, this is what I saw. Can we incorporate these types of things? And a lot comes out of those public meetings.
One of the questions that I'm getting, Bob, is, the main objective was to find out, can we have a park and rec / library at that location? I believe the school is like 40,000 square feet, roughly, is that correct? Center school?
Off the top of my head, I don't recall.
But the question I'm getting is, why would we need to do what would keep us from putting a library / park and rec facility there on a 40,000 square foot possibility, as possibility? Why wouldn't you be able to do that? Why wouldn't you be able to go to a developer? And these are the questions that I'm getting. Why wouldn't you be able to go to an architect and developer and say, here's what we want to do, what can we get for this money? Why would we?
Because the first step in that process is identifying the needs of Parks and Rec and the library, and seeing what spaces are unique to Brookfield that we want programs to offer our residents. That's what both of these committees have done. Second step is, when we did that, and they added up the total square footage, it came out to 70,000 square feet. And that was, now the second step is, how do we find the best utilization of those spaces and reduce those spaces to have duplicate program in a similar space, or the same space, so we can condense it and make it reasonable for people in Brookfield. And that's what we're doing now.
Also, phase two, we'll look at, all right, here are all the needs of the library and Parks and Rec. Here's the space we have. This is what it will cost to rehab space. This is what it will cost to build it new.
That's
Because
actually, I
part
think,
of that,
phase one.
the cost for rehab might be more than even a partial demo, right? We just don't know yet.
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. And given the current state of the, they'll start to study structural system, electrical systems,
Right.
mechanical systems, in-depth pre-bond for center school in phase two. That was not part of phase one.
Right, right.
Phase one was proof of concept.
Yeah.
So I love all of this, and I really do commend you all for your hard work. I know there's been a lot of years in the coming, and I think it's important to examine this. Look, our school is gonna be vacated, we're gonna have this space, what are we gonna do with it? Be very easy to just throw mothballs in there and keep the heat on low. I mean, the building does need a tremendous amount of work, I'm tracking that. What I can't get my mind around, and because we are in such a fiscally tight situation, is where we're even gonna come up with $125,000 in this next budget. And I really would hate for the budget to be shot down because of that ask. We're already looking at a 5% tax increase, inflation is out of control, every capital project we've touched has increased tremendously. It's just, we're in a sticky situation. We're looking hard for extra money to pay for fuel for this winter, so the list just keeps going on and on. I mean, what if we didn't, what if that money wasn't asked for in this year, but maybe next year?
Can I ask a question to your question?
Mhm.
How much would it cost to mothball it for the year?
I don't have that analysis, I'm hoping that
We
will
had
come out
an
in the
initial
study.
estimate about to just keep the building as is, about $50,000 a year,
But that was done when?
5 years ago.
I would
I
hate
have
to
an
mothball,
estimate
that's not
here.
my suggestion, I think we need to utilize the space how
And
we
and
can.
And we talked about that. And that's something we talked about, a partial repurposing, a partial reuse of the space in the interim.
Mhm.
Uh,
Right.
It's something that it's still fluid, we're still working on.
Is that part of the study?
No, that is
No.
something that, through collaboration between Parks and Rec and the new library committee, that they're talking about, how can this best be utilized moving forward prior to even the conversion happening? How can we utilize
Right.
the building, because it needs to be maintained. You have to maintain the asset.
Yeah.
And if we're gonna maintain the asset, at least if we can get some use out of it, albeit not an ideal use, it would be a benefit to the community.
So things like basketball leagues could use the gyms,
We
right?
talked about cooking classes at the
Yeah,
library.
different groups could meet and use the space while we're making these final
There would be
decisions.
nights, there's lots of different things
Yeah.
for larger spaces.
So it could be a holding place temporarily while the years progress and we have the money to even execute a $30 million project.
You're throwing out a pretty big number
Number,
there.
yeah.
Well, 5 years from now, who knows how much things are gonna cost?
We can see also in a recession, right?
Oh,
Things
that's
come down. In that, when we're taking these steps, I think instead of looking at where the beginning is, we need to look at where the end is. When are we putting a shovel in the ground? When is it in the 10-year capital, the 15 and 20-year capital plan of the town? And work your way backwards. And the reason I say that, because if we have a spot in the 5-year or 10-year capital, that's 5 years off, and we back up, well, then the time is now to move forward.
But without
If it's-
gauging what the voters want, how do we
If it's
start
n-
there?
If it's not in the capital until 10 years out, yeah, we're probably preliminary with the ask. So I think we need to work backwards rather than forwards with that, because we have a tendency to kick this can down the road and keep waiting and keep waiting and keep waiting until it may be too late. So that's why I said, I know we had a capital plan and capital expenditure plan. Again, those things are fluid, they do move.
Yep.
But seeing where this lies in there, I know we have a police station, I know we have communication systems, I know we have a new school going up. I just ask that we don't push it for the sake of pushing it. We really look to see where we need that end goal to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I would not look at pushing it. I understand what you're saying, Paul, for the sake of pushing it. But when you look at, again, there's nothing more than I wouldn't go that far, but I am totally in favor of having a park and rec that is gonna be able to be functional and really service and have library. When we had the last referendum, I was in favor of a library, not that library, but a library. We needed to do something. So my concern is, again, you know, if, let's say, in 4 or 5 years, we start to activate, like you say, we go through this study, you know, we're gonna be coming off of 2 or 3 of very tough tax years with the school, and then we still haven't addressed a number of issues. It wouldn't, if I were to say no to the appropriate, it wouldn't be because of just kicking it down the road. This is something that I understand we need, and I am in favor of, again, it's, for me, it's timing.
And I think the purpose of tonight was just to kind of give you a litmus of where we are in the process, how we're moving down the road, where we're asking for the next step and why, not really to debate the finer points.
And what, tonight was very valuable. It was very valuable to me. And I think that's one of the reasons why Tara is saying, we need to get this, the final part, whatever it is, this study, we need to get that information as soon as we can get it, so that we can at least make a, you know, some type of rational decision and move forward.
But I do want to address that, you know, there was a lot of discord at the beginning of this process. Our last meeting was a fantastic meeting with all 3 user groups. You know, a lot of great brain work came out of that, a lot of great collaboration came out of that. We should really kind of keep that momentum going before people kind of go back to their respective corners. So we kind of look forward to continuing this work and working together with both Parks and Rec and the library.
Just 2 things I'd like to bring up. One, we have a 10-year capital plan, and people and the committee that works on that works really, really hard to look at all these needs and then try to fit them into that 10-year capital plan. This is part of the process, and I think we should have the capital committee look at this, because we have talked about this when the debt bubble flops off in 2027, when we're finished paying for the high school, we need to move forward with other projects. But it's not 2027 when you start planning. You start planning now because it'll take 4 or 5 years before we actually get a shovel in the ground. We did this with the new school. Everybody in this town, well, 80% of people in this town, knew we needed a new school 20 some odd years ago. When my kids attended Huckleberry, it was a horror show, right? And my youngest is 30. It takes time to do these things, and you can't just kick them down the road. You have to plan. You have to get in that capital plan. You have to fit these pieces together, right? Whether you're in favor or not, you have to have a process, and you have to go through the plan. The second thing I'd like to just discuss, when we first formed the Ad hoc Library Committee, I know this committee only has, the formal committee only has library members on it, and I think we should readjust, put 2 people from Parks and Rec, 2 people from library, people from the NBC, just to make sure technically everybody's represented.
Yeah.
So somebody doesn't say 2 years from now, you know, it was all library people. It was only library people, and it's not. This has been a cooperative effort on both Parks and Rec and library, and done so far, from what I've heard from the person that lives with me, that it's been going pretty well.
So how do we get to the will of the voter? I mean, we're gonna put all of this work forth, and then maybe the voters want it, maybe they don't?
Well, I think, if I may, going through phase 2 will give the voters an opportunity to see all the details they need to see, to be part of the process, but also make an informed decision of what we should do next as a town.
And I think Steve can speak to that, you know, as the former head of the town, and going through that school process, how it worked and.
Well, school is very different from the library.
It is and it isn't.
We also need 2 other schools down the road in the 10-year plan.
It is different, but it's not different. We're still talking about planning capital needs and new facilities for us townwide. And what we had said at the beginning of the school was, this isn't about the schools, it's about the community. And we're gonna say the same thing about the library and Parks and Rec. It isn't just about library and Parks and Rec. It really is about the community. It's about people who want more pickleball courts, right? It's about people who want more makerspace, people who want cooking programs. There's a whole, you know, host of subsets that really have a specific interest in this kind of combined project. So it really is about community. You know, I'm not here to advocate one way or another. It really, NBC is like I said before, we're a facilitator in the process. We're a program manager. We have no vested interest in either one of these projects moving forward. It would actually be less work for the NBC if it didn't, and give me more time
Thanks,
at the
Paul.
office. But, you know,
Not
we're,
calling.
you know, we're here to help facilitate and explain the process because that's what we're here for. So,
Thank you.
To Tara's point, the sooner you can get back to us, the better with the budget coming up. It's really important, because these dates are gonna, they don't slide.
Cassie,
Don't
do you
slide.
know what line, like this ask, this $120,000 ask, will that, do you know where that's gonna come in the budget, where that request would be?
That would be a capital request.
It's Tracy.
Oh, no,
should
oh,
answer that
okay. Oh, I
question
didn't
because
say-
She's the
I couldn't tell with the
department
math.
head of the
I'm the
library.
library director,
Yeah.
Tracy Dewey. I submitted the capital approval based on the library board's approval. It was for $150,000 in the capital budget for this next coming year. It's
Okay.
already in the
So that'll be in the library, on the,
We ultimately
yeah,
decided to
yeah,
put it all
okay.
in one
Combined.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
combined it, but we
Yeah.
put it in the library.
Okay, that's, yeah, that's fine. So I couldn't tell who was behind that.
All right, I don't have any other questions.
No, thank you very
Thank
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you for your patience, Greg. You're up.
He's paid by the hour, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get, you want to just take 5 minutes? Let these people get out?
I'd like to keep going, actually.
That's fine.
Oh, wait, Mary.
Mary.
Oh, I didn't realize you were gonna leave. Okay. Shoot. Can I do something really quick?
Sure.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda again to recognize Mary Knox. I didn't realize she was in the audience this evening, but we did get this in the mail today from Governor Lamont, and I just would be remiss to not
I
take
will
advantage.
second that motion.
Any discussion?
None.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Mary, if you wouldn't mind, I don't mean to put you on the spot or embarrass you, but if you could come forward. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Mary Knox is our outgoing Director of Parks and Recreation, and she's been with the town of Brookfield for 29 years. And we had a farewell for her on Friday, that being her last day. So this did literally come in the mail today, and Ginny said she's here, so I'm just gonna go ahead and read this, and then be able to give it to you. I told you it was coming. So, from the state of Connecticut, by His Excellency Ned Lamont, Governor, an official statement. On behalf of the state of Connecticut, I, Ned Lamont, Governor, take great pleasure in congratulating Mary Knox on the occasion of your retirement from the town of Brookfield. You retire after 29 years of dedicated service to the town of Brookfield, most recently in the role of Director of Parks and Recreation. Throughout your long tenure, you have earned the respect of your colleagues, you have displayed professionalism, an outstanding work ethic, and a commitment to excellence that are truly appreciated. You have shared your expertise, vision, and compassion for others, not only with your colleagues, but also with the entire community. In your years with the town of Brookfield, you have proven to be an inspirational leader, a role model for all citizens to follow. I applaud your lengthy and notable career and wish you the very best for a happy and healthy retirement. Therefore, I, Ned Lamont, Governor of the state of Connecticut, do hereby convey honor and recognition upon Mary Knox in the state of Connecticut. Signed, Governor Ned Lamont. We wish you all the best. All right, thank you for letting me do that. See you soon, Mary. Take care. Greg, back to you. Take 3.
Okay, so, thank you. So in your package is a presentation tonight titled Fire Rescue and Ambulance Emergency Service Study. I hope you all have a copy of that with you.
Mm-hmm.
You can't open it? It's a PDF.
Yeah. I don't know why.
4A.
on your email, Ginny?
No, I have it on,
It's on the town website for Board of Selectmen. If you double-click on the agenda, it's there. I know it's there.
oh, great.
Left.
Oh. Yeah.
Over here.
Well, while we were waiting, two men were walking down, no.
That's the internet. Oh. I'm gonna let you go. Can you do it without it, Greg?
I can.
Let's go.
Did I go?
Yes, please.
Okay, so in front of you is this 3 or 4 page presentation, and it's got an agenda, which I'll quickly hit on and go through. Again, we're talking about fire, rescue, and ambulance emergency service study. So what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about what is the concern. I'm going to identify and define the concern. Then I'm going to talk about who can help, and really who have we talked to prepare this RFP. And then I'm going to suggest to you the RFP that we would like to issue. And then I'm going to talk about what's not in the RFP, and then the things we've learned by looking into the study that we may leverage going forward. So with that, I'd like to identify the concern that we've laid out. And I'm going to read this because I think it's important. It really sets the stage for what we're trying to do here. And I'm going to just read these 2 sentences. An increase in demand of services from Brookfield's 2 fire companies and EMS department is placing pressure on their operating and capital budgets and human resources. Factors impacting the increase in demand have not been studied, but subjectively are being attributed to a few things. Changes in local demographics, increased development, both commercial, retail, and residential, and changes in workplace habits. People may be more working out of their home. And there's probably other factors, but those are 3 of some that we most hear most often. So that's the concern on the table. Now, having said that, the Board of Finance, I believe, has allocated ARPA money for a study. And this presentation is to present to you the RFP that we're suggesting that the procurement department goes forward with, hopefully very soon. So, who might help? So in your package, I have 4 lines here of organizations or individuals who can help with this study. And I will tell you, I've talked to at least 1 or 2 companies on each of these 4 lines. The first is Advance CT. That is the Economic Resource Center, or called CERC in the past. We've also talked to Yukon Urban Studies Center, and they were recommended to us by COST, the Connecticut Council of Small Towns. We've also talked to several consulting companies as recommended by WestCog. And finally, we talked to niche companies who specialize in studying emergency services in various towns. And I will tell you, we talked to 3 of these small niche companies, 1 in Connecticut, 1 in New York State, and 1 in Pennsylvania. The one in New York State is actually in Westchester County. I just spoke to him this afternoon. They've helped us form this RFP and have given us input to what I'm now presenting to you. So, the suggested RFP. It's going to include the standard provisions and conditions that are in the existing procurement policies and procedures. So we have standard language around pre-bid meetings, bonding, insurance, and many other requirements that are standard in all of our RFPs. But specific to this issue is the scope of work. And that's what I'm going to go through over the next page. And I'm not going to read through all of it. There's a lot of information in front of you. So, the scope of service, the purpose of this, the purpose of the study, and I'm going to read this, is to evaluate the optimum service model for the town's emergency services, which include rescue, ambulance, and both fire companies. The goal of this work is to evaluate the town's emergency service needs, project future growth, and impact that economic development has had on those services in order to guide the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance on the town's annual and capital 10-year plan. That's the purpose of the study. Not an easy task. The desired outcome of the study is to determine an optimal, cost-effective system which is inclusive of many components: organizational structure, staffing levels, assignments, and effective use of volunteers, apparatus, equipment, and facilities. Now, before I go on, let me mention a couple things. This work is not my work. It's the work of many people over the past couple of weeks. Most notably in our procurement office, Jules, our procurement manager, has been very involved in this. I received a lot of valuable input from Marcia, and I've talked to many of the consultants I mentioned up there above, further up on the page. So I'm just simply the presenter tonight, and I've kind of facilitated just packaging all of this together. I'll also mention that I presented this presentation to both fire company chiefs, Andy Ellis and Gary Grambling. Both of them know this presentation. They're on board with what I'm saying here tonight. So with that, we're going to keep going through this. Key components of the RFP, there's 14 of them listed. And these are topics we're going to ask the person that's awarded the bid to consider when they do their study. It's looking at population in our community, change in demographics, looking at mutual aid agreements, standard operating procedures, bylaws, response statistics, vehicle and staffing, management practices, training schedules, and their 10-year capital plan. That's among the 14 items that we're asking to be studied by the winner of this bid, if you will. I'm going to flip to the next page.
I'm trying to forget it.
We're also asking that individuals and groups be interviewed, at least in person or by phone conference, for this study to be effective. Town officials, community members, both fire chiefs, their staffs, fire marshals, police department, dispatch, and communication staff. We're asking they all be interviewed and being allowed to be inputted into this study. Then we're asking for specific specifications to be completed, and I list 14 of them here, and they're really metrics. And if you look at any one of these metrics I've listed, let me just tack off a few. Number and timing of calls, type and mix of calls, response times, duration of calls, consecutive calls, missed calls, mutual aid, cost per call, productivity of personnel, downtime and redundancy are among the 14 listed in front of you. Any one of these, in and of itself, is really one metric in isolation. I think to look at this kind of subject, of which I am not a subject matter expert, I've depended on others to help provide this input. Any one of these metrics, in and of itself, is really incomplete and I would say meaningless. You've got to look at this thing in many ways from many different perspectives. And the only way it can be done, I think, is if we provide a very high-quality, detailed baseline level of data. And I've defined those on the last half of page 2. Let me just list those off briefly. We've created, on the process of creating, a list of commercial, industrial, and residential developments completed starting January 1st of 2020. We're also working to complete a list of all commercial, industrial, and residential development projections through 2027. We're also going to provide CERC and WestCog housing and other demographic reports. This is baseline data we're going to have available to the consultants. Both EMS and fire department emergency call response data is going to be available from 2020 going forward. All fire marshal inspection database reports or database information will be available. We'll also provide operating and capital budgets for the EMS and fire departments back to 2020. And we'll provide any prior EMS and fire studies or any strategic plans they might have had in place before today. So that baseline data is going to be made available to the winning bidder.
Is there any way you can get population projections too, from WestCog or the U.S.
We can.
Census?
There are projections in both those databases, and we'll provide those
Okay.
as available.
Okay.
We're not going to make up new projections. We're going to provide what's available from the state, either by CERC or advanced CT.
Okay, thank you.
Greg, do you want to wait till the end? I've got one question.
Go
on
ahead,
this.
go ahead.
We're making a list of the commercial, industrial, residential development in the last 2 years, and we're also going to project, or look to project 23 to 27. My question, which you may not have the answer, is with everything that's going on with development and building, and projects that most likely are not going to happen, how do we determine what's really feasible to move forward and what's not feasible?
So in the database right now, it's probably about 40 columns across, and several of the columns include permits submitted by either wetlands, planning, or zoning, and if they're not approved, if they are approved, what's their expiration date? And if they're not approved, if they're pending. And we're going to have to make a judgment on those. Harry, as you well know, there are many projects in this town that got approved many years ago that still haven't been built. And they may never be built, but they're open permits in land use.
Okay.
So there's going to have to be a judgment made, and maybe it'll
Okay.
be a range.
Yeah.
I mean, I can think of a couple perfect examples that have held us up on Streetscape Phase 4 that have been promised for years, and we're no closer now than we were 2 years ago, and they may never be built.
And that was my question.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks
So,
for the answer.
yeah, so there's gonna have to be a range on those guesstimates, if you will.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So the schedule for this study, hopefully with your approval tonight, we'll issue the RFP this week. We'll select the bidders either the last week in December or early January. And then the selected bidder or awardee will do their interviews and analysis all the way through April. Ah, Jenny, you got it.
Finally, sorry.
Next, we're on the last page, Jenny. Right there, top of that page. There we are.
Oh, well.
If we want, we can all go back and do it again.
Yeah.
And then the goal is to, with this schedule, and by the way, when we talked to these consultants, they told us a couple things. The dollars that have been allocated by the Board of Finance are within budget for this kind of study. And they also said that this study is going to take about 12 to 14 weeks. So if you look at the timeline from here, this says we can have our final report issued by the end of April of next year.
Do we have an idea of what this study was going to cost? I mean, roughly?
You know, I think we have to wait till the RFPs come
Okay.
back. I can just, my sense is, based on the conversations we've had, it'll be within the budget that the
Okay.
Board of Finance has been approved.
Okay.
And then there's some things where I'm going to suggest we don't do in this study. We can always add them, but we're not going to necessarily talk about officer development plans or succession planning. I mean, the more things we pack onto this, the more cost it's going to take and the more time it's going to take. I think the real goal is to focus on the concern that I talked about at the beginning of this presentation. So having said all that, what have we learned and where are we going with this? So the first thing I'd like to mention is that we have created I call it an economic development database. This is something, and all of you have asked questions over the years, recently or years ago, how many projects are approved? What's coming in the TCD? Is it 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom? Is it market rate, incentive, or affordable? And every time those questions are asked, one of us in land use pulls together that information. But we never really had a database that either land use, the WPCA, or really my office can use that we kept current as part of a work process of our normal workflow. That is in the process of changing. And I will thank the WPCA, Nelson's here. Tara's been a part of this. And with the staff in their office and at the land use office with Rochelle, as Tara knows, we've been working for the past few weeks and are in the process of creating a new workflow, a new work process, a database that's going to house the information I just talked about.
This is a great tool. It's a living, we're taking it to the cloud, so to speak, Brookfield, so watch out, because this is like next level. People aren't just operating, drinking out of their own soda straws, working on their own Excel spreadsheets. It's this collaborative effort to bring all of the information to one place. And it takes a lot of work to get all this information down. It doesn't sound like that big of a task, but it truly is. Yeah. There's 40 categories, and I just wanted to thank everybody for the hard work on it.
Yeah. So, to set this up, we actually worked with IT, because the question was, why not do it with what we have now with our online permit database? And for various reasons, it just doesn't work. I've talked to my peers across the state, hoping to find such a database or online system, and honestly, one that I've not been able to find one exists for the level of detail we're now providing. That'll be available to this consultant for this study, and I hope it could be leveraged across other departments in town that want to look at that information, do their planning or budgeting or forecasting. The second thing I'll mention, and this is strictly a side note, I think the first important step is to do the study. But if in fact there are increased costs that have to be captured, they can be captured by the way we normally collect revenue in this town. But I just want to mention to you, and I don't mention it as something that I recommend. I don't think we're ready for the conversation, but I just want to mention there are other legislative public acts that have been enacted since 2015 that allow for the capture, and I think one other presenter talked about fire tax or something.
districts.
There's two things that are out there now, and we're just beginning to learn and talk about them. I'm not suggesting they're right for us or appropriate for us, but they are special service districts, SSDs, and tax increment districts, TIFs. And they're all a matter of public acts, and they're out there. And we're learning more and more about them. We actually got an update from Pullman and Comley a couple days ago about both of those districts and what they do, what it requires to enact them, and where may be a good fit for us in Brookfield. So I just present that as something we're looking at, not suggesting it's right or appropriate for us, but it's something we just have to evaluate on this whole process, I think after the study's done. So that's the presentation. Any questions?
So this study is expected to be complete by the end of April, and we're just now going into the budget. We heard last month from Chief Ellis that he's probably short an ambulance and somewhere to house that ambulance. I'm expecting him to come with that ask of an ambulance and an addition to house the ambulance. Will this study determine, based on the information that we're requesting them to get the numbers on these calls and what kind of calls and length of the calls, et cetera, this whole list, will this study be able to determine for us if in fact we need that extra ambulance?
The goal is to project the ideal, most cost-effective model for the town. And what that's going to say or how it's going to say it, I don't know. But that certainly is an important criteria. And I think that's actually what this came about. I mean, Mr. Ellis was here last meeting, and he talked about his needs. And that was the beginning of packaging up this and, this RFP, because those funds are available for that study. So that's the goal. And I think when bids are received, hopefully we get many bidders. I've talked to several who have said they're interested, some who have said, quite honestly, this is not an expertise we're good at. I'm sorry, we're probably not interested. But here's the name of a company that probably is. So I think the hope is that we get many people bidding. Before we select a company, we interview them, and we pick someone who fills the need that we have. That's the goal. I hope it answers those questions. I don't know that there's a guarantee. Again, we don't have to select anybody. If bids come back and we're not happy with any of them, or none of them fit the needs we have, we don't have to select anybody. And then we have to regroup and say, what are we going to do now? So that's the goal.
Okay.
Thank you, Craig.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
So we can. So Jules is waiting on a phone call tomorrow morning.
If this is ARPA funded, the Board of Selectmen already approved it. Board of Finance already approved the study. Now we just go to RFP, which is a business side of the house.
Jules, you listening?
Go to RFP.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. All right, announcements. We will not be having a coffee as a Board of Selectmen in December, but we will reconvene next year, January 28th, from 9 to 10 at Jester's. The calendar for 2023 is the same as it has been, which is the last Saturday of every month. The American Red Cross sponsored by the Lions Club, will have a blood drive at the Congregational Church on the 28th of December. There's a couple other announcements that I wanted to carry over from Ginny's last spotlight, which are that the Lions Club will also be hosting a run for sight. It's a 4-miler on the 1st of January. You can find more information on that on the town website. And the next major event will be on the 17th of December, where the Brookfield Police Department will be hosting their 8th annual toy drive. And they have a flyer on the police department Facebook page, or you can also get more on that on our town website. The Connecticut Conference of Municipalities sent an invitation to nominate townspeople as civic ambassadors, and I thought this was a great invitation. I already shared it with Marnie McNiff of the Youth Council. She was going to present it to her folks over there. And if anybody has a noteworthy neighbor or someone who's really done something quite remarkable across town, be it a volunteer or an appointee or an elected official or just a normal everyday citizen who might not have time to volunteer for town stuff but is doing amazing other things, please read more on that and submit your nominations through me, please. We have several vacancies that still exist on the Arts Commission, the Board of Assessment Appeals, Inland Wetlands Commission, the Lake Willenona Authority, the MBC, Parks and Rec, Planning Commission, and the WPCA. Someone earlier had said that there's a lot of talent across town, and there really truly is. People in Brookfield are the best, and it's just sometimes people don't realize that there's a need, or they may not have the time necessarily, but please spread the word and bring more people to the forefront for volunteering across town. Speaking of the spotlight, I did want to mention that there are 1,578 people who are signed up to receive the spotlight on a monthly basis, and there's a lot of work that goes into putting this whole thing together, and there's a lot of really valuable information. I've said before, it's a great way to kind of spread the word for people who aren't on social media, who still rely heavily on just email. So also please do tell your neighbors and friends that they can sign up for Spotlight on the town website. Of those 1,578 people who signed up, there were 635 who didn't open the email. So for everyone who doesn't open the email, that's communication that's missed. And then we constantly have people say, well, why didn't I hear about that? Well, sign up for Spotlight and open the emails. But it's hard to communicate nowadays, and we've talked about that before, but this is just a really good way to consolidate information and share the word. And same holds true with the Everbridge, which I've talked about before for emergencies. ct.gov, if you're not already signed up or your neighbors aren't, just please plant that seed. God forbid we have any kind of a major catastrophe or another local emergency like the microburst that came through a couple of years ago. This is going to be a kind of the emergency network's way of informing you or getting a hold of you, if need be. I think that was it for announcements. You guys have anything? No? Moving on to correspondence. Oh, I did have one other announcement. Our Brookfield Pop Warner cheerleaders are actually in Orlando right now. I think they cheered in the national championship today. So send good vibes to them. I'm really proud of those girls. We had a team win the national championship last year, so maybe we can repeat that this year. Probably be more information on that tomorrow morning.
That's right.
Correspondence. We have some correspondence from Mr. Grimes. Steve or Harry, do you have anything you'd like to add or comment on, respond to?
A couple of the just one quick thing. A couple of the questions had to deal with policy, and I'd like to just maybe just research that a little bit, and if the board wants to, they can, and if we have any comments, we can come back next month in January and bring them forward.
Okay.
All right. Anything else? We hit the monthly financial update already. There are no new items. I do have an update moving on to number 7 for the Connecticut Siting Council and the proposed cell tower at 60 Vale Road. from what I see on their website and the letter that they posted, the decision has been postponed until from the 7th of January to the 3rd of February. And apparently, according to the letter, they had to get the consent of the applicant to postpone their decision. And that's really the only update I have. There is a lot of information on their Siting Council website, but short of sifting through thousands of pages of documents, I was trying to just determine, what's next for Brookfield and what does this mean to our residents. There was really no reason why it was extended, but I've been told that they're not accepting any more public comment. So I don't know if anybody is to submit anything now, if it will be put into the record or not, but my recommendation would be that if any residents are still desire to write into the Siting Council, obviously they should do that, and I would send it certified mail. That way you're getting your return receipt or your delivery receipt. I guess we just wait and see, and I don't know, from what I understand, the state of Connecticut is one of about 4 states that still has a Siting Council, so we went through the hearing and people did speak at the hearing, and I think there has been some written correspondence that they did receive before the deadline of the closing of the public comment, which was on the 3rd of December, 2 days ago. So that's the only update I have for the cell phone tower. Do you guys have anything to add to that?
No, not at this time.
I'm not. I trying to figure out how to word this so that I word it right. Our $5 million or $6 million communication program. I'm trying to verify or find out why we have to have 5G on this tower. I don't, and I may be wrong, but I don't believe that was part of the initial. It's not part of the communications, the 5G. That would be something other than what was on our proposal for the $5.9 million communication system. So I'm trying to get information as to why we have to have that.
We don't have to have that. For
On
the
that-
system we're
Right.
buying,
Yeah.
that
So-
it's not wireless dependent
Right.
at all.
So if we don't have control, and forgive me if I'm not accurate, I'm trying to stay up with this. If we would not have control of what's on this tower, why would we not either try to find out if it's possible to put that communication system on the tower at Central, or what the cost would be to put up a tower of our own?
$150,000 to $200,000.
Okay,
According
right.
to the consultant.
okay. Is it worth that to have control of that tower? Well, I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no, it's a question that I have. Do we now have control of that tower? And that's what what I'm wrestling with this whole thing. Why do we have to have that? If you don't have good cell service, get some going through that. And I know there is a stretch where it's bad, and I have AT&T, and I'm going tomorrow to get a different company. But if that's the main reason is cell service, then get a different phone. I mean, I'm talking about residents now, not, if it's going to hinder our communications, but I don't think that was part of the original process. And again, I might be wrong, but the way I read it, it wasn't part of the program.
I think we're looking at 2 different things. One is, do we build our own tower and put our communication equipment on it, right? 2, do we piggyback on a tower that's being installed on Vale Road or proposed to be installed on Vale Road? My experience with the Siting Council is, barring any major issue, they will probably approve the Vale Road tower. that means we would spend money on a tower when we could get on another tower for free. We can, and I've said this for 5 years, this town has no control over 5G. We have no control over who builds towers. We have no control over what they put on those towers. That's the FCC, the Connecticut Siting Council, and the Connecticut Legislature. And I've advocated for people to go to those entities. If you disagree with 5G, you don't want it in your town, you're in this room arguing to people who have literally no control over it. I understand your concerns, fully. I don't agree with your concerns, but I understand them. But you're, what's the old expression? You're barking up the wrong tree. Go to the FCC. Scream and yell at the FCC. And I cannot see any case where it would make sense for us to build our own tower when this other tower is going to go in anyway.
Well, we
Now,
don't
if
know
they
yet.
turn that tower down, then it's a whole new story. We look at it. My experience has been they're not going to turn
Steve,
the
do you
tower
know if
down.
there's any possibility of using the central tower? Is that completely?
We're already on this tower.
No, I mean for the communication, put the communication.
We're already on this tower
With the old system?
With
with the old system. We have the topmost position on that tower. That's ours in perpetuity.
They're saying, from what I understand, they're saying that the new system, this tower right here in this parking lot can't accommodate it because there's a hole down on the Federal Road corridor by
Yes, there is.
BJ's, and
There's a
the
whole,
sight line of vision and everything else
yeah,
won't.
it's a line of sight, a lot of it's line of sight. So there's a whole section of Southern Federal Road running all the way over to Vale Road, where Golf Quest is and
Right.
and those construction, that really has, you know it, terrible reception. Putting it on this tower at Central is not gonna help that. That's why they're trying to build this new tower. And also, they're trying to build more capacity.
I have a question for you.
And
forgive me-
make money.
Forgive me if I
And
should.
we already have 9 other
Forgive me if
towers
I
in
should know
town.
this.
How many more do we need?
The reason why we would need it on this tower is not for the communication system, but for the 5G to go with the communication system, as in addition to the communication system, correct?
I'm sorry, say that again, Harry, I'm sorry.
That dead spot that you're talking about is
Mhm.
real. I understand that. But the reason why we wouldn't be able to,
We have the
the reason
same
why we would
problem
want, right,
with our fire and police going from Central down to that area.
They use
So
a
it would-
network called
but that is,
FirstNet,
Yeah.
and there's problems with FirstNet in that area.
Right.
But what are we gonna do? Cover every single square inch of every
So you're
town?
gonna say to some people, sorry, you call for an ambulance, we can't get them
If
there.
you have any other
Because you
service
live in an area
provider-
with no coverage. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. Everyone in town has the right to have the same coverage and ability to communicate with police and fire as everyone else in town.
There was an accident on, right by White Turkey Pantry at 8:15 this morning. I'm wondering if they had to use FirstNet, because I have AT&T, and I will tell you on Candlewood Lake Road, from CVS up to the new school area, there's dead spots there.
Yeah.
I too am leaving AT&T because there's other providers who cover the area.
Yeah.
But my question is, did they have a problem with FirstNet in that area? There's always calls. I have this new app where I get every single call. And to Greg's presentation and Andy's last month, there is this uptick in responses. I don't know what's going on out there, but it's very, very busy. But
You know,
I-
when
I
it comes
just
to
am
fires
not buying
and
this
responding to
tower.
emergencies, seconds count. Seconds count. And we need more coverage on Southern Federal Road. We do. And the Vale Road project seems to fit exactly what the town needs. And the cost would be nominal for us.
why did you guys vote down the tower on the Public Works site last summer?
We had this discussion at the last Board of
And I
Selectmen
don't
meeting, and I
remember what you
told you
said.
that there wasn't enough space there. We don't have enough space for public works there. Never mind giving them an 150 by 150 space next to our sand, what would you call that building, igloo?
A salt hut.
Right? I didn't think it was an appropriate place to put it because we don't have enough space for public works as it is.
So it was about space?
For me, it was, yeah.
it wasn't for me, that was not the reason why I did it. But I understand what Steve is saying, but that was not the reason why I voted, was it space.
Well, I suggest what we do is we wait and see what the siting council does and then move forward from there.
Because they would have been paying us a rent.
Yeah, $1,500 a month.
No, it wasn't even that much, was it, Steve? Was it? I thought it was like 15,000 a year or something.
No, no. There are some down south. I know that Wilton has one tower in a very desirable location. They get about $50,000 a year. The town got
Ours
1,500.
was like,
And
ours
if
was
they
less than
added
20,000.
additional providers, they
I
would go
believe.
up like
I believe ours
$300.
was less, our net was gonna be less than 20 or 25,000.
We don't get much money at all from the rent from that tower.
So you're saying the residents of the town have no recourse when it comes to the siting council for this particular situation?
Not with well,
I've said it for 5 years, that's the law. It's the law, I'm sorry, it is. And they have specifically outlawed towns from making any zoning laws, any rules, any regulations to stop the legislature and the siting council from placing towers. We can pass a zoning law that says no towers in this town, we absolutely forbid them, they can just go ahead and build them.
So who has the liability when our residents get sick from the tower going up?
I've never seen anybody get sick from a tower personally, but they would have to go to the siting council, to whoever owns the tower, sue them. You know, that's what you do. You know, if you look at this, and I know people disagree on this, but we had a study done, as I said, by Jack Ludwig. The incidence of cancer, now, these towers have been up for almost 40 years. 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, now 5G. The incidence of disease has not grown at all. Cancer has not grown at all over that time period. In many cases, the incidence of cancer has stayed exactly the same or slightly lowered. You would think if you had thousands of towers radiating people, that cancer would go through the roof. Other problems people have would go through the roof. Nothing has. So when you look at these studies, in fact, we were given one study.
Well, the evidence is inconclusive because the FCC has not come back from their demand for answers from last summer. And
The FCC has not gotten their responses, that's true.
And the FCC report, it was from 1996. So we don't know where the evidence lies right now because the findings are inconclusive.
I would say the findings are, I don't want to go into a 3-hour argument here.
Yeah, we could argue this
The
all night. 'Cause
findings are
clearly
not
you're there and I'm
inconclusive
here.
so far.
But the residents of Brookfield are
The
somewhere
day
else.
somebody can show me that cancer has risen in Brookfield because of these towers, I will change my mind. But right now, it's the proof is not there. You get, one of the pieces of evidence we were given in my administration by Joan, who's a very nice lady, was here's proof. Here's proof that cancer is caused. And you have to have a physics degree to read this. You really do. And Jack Ludwig read it for me. And he said, Steve, this study they gave you as proof of it causing cancer does exactly the opposite if you read it and can understand it.
Who's Jack Ludwig?
He's a member of the NBC.
He's a doctor?
No, he's got a doctorate in physics. Very smart guy. And you can argue either way on this issue, but you have to go with the real facts. Unfortunately, in the United States over the last few years, people don't care about facts.
We just trust the science, I guess.
They care about what they hear on the news. They care about some website that they read. And unfortunately, people tend to go to websites and to get information that agrees with the opinions that they already have. Okay, that's fine. But you really need to study this carefully to make a decision. And back to my first point, regardless of how you, I, and Harry feel, we have no control over this. None. I wish it was different, but we have no control.
Okay, well, the update I wanted to provide was just that they have extended their decision. I don't know why. If residents still want to pursue submitting something in writing, I would suggest that they do that. Consent agenda.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda items A to E. Do you want to talk about the new employees?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to say on new hires is that Lorraine retired as our social services director, and Ryan Soto, who was hired under the ARPA funding to be our behavioral health liaison, has taken her place as a social services director, so that we now have a vacancy, and the job is posted on the website for an 18-month period to backfill the behavioral health liaison.
Just one thing, I know that a lot of people notice it already, but Ann Trank, a longtime employee of the town, passed away last week. She was a really, really nice person, hardworking, and as I said to her son when I went to her wake, you always knew where you stood with Ann. She was right up front with you, and she's gonna be missed. She was really a great worker,
Yeah, it's been a very sad
very sad.
few weeks here at the town hall. And she's already missed. So what's your motion?
That we approve items
I'll
A through
second,
E.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion?
No?
All in favor?
Aye.
Appointments for the Parks and Rec Commission. I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Brian Chanowski from a regular to an alternate for the term of today through the 5th of February 2024. And also that Tom Murphy is switched from an alternate to a regular member with the term of today through the 5th of February 2024, as requested by Brian Chanowski and Tom Murphy, and recommended by the RTC.
I'll second that.
Basically, they're just
Yeah,
switching
I was just
positions.
gonna say that. Flip flop. And I think they've done that before, actually. Okay. A second?
I'll second.
I made the motion.
I just read the motion.
You made the motion? I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then lastly, that we appoint Ellen Melville, the Director of our Senior and Social Services, as the municipal agent for the elderly, replacing Lorraine, who retired from today through the 6th of February 2024.
I'll make that motion.
You'll second that motion?
Yes.
Any discussion?
None.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I wish you joy and peace
Well,
Wait a
in the
minute.
new year.
Got one more item.
What is it?
I make a motion that we add an item to the agenda to discuss adding someone to the Parks and Rec Commission.
Yeah, I
Like
saw
this one?
that in my packet this morning, but that email came in at 4:41 on Friday, so. I
You don't
wasn't-
want to add it to the agenda?
No, not right now.
We can do that in January.
Well, I made a motion, we add it to the agenda.
Oh, okay.
Do I get a second?
I'm not seconding
No?
that.
Okay.
I do want to make one comment. Has been concern and talk because around the survey that had gone into our school system, and I just wanted to let people know what the process is here. There currently is not in place a policy concerning surveys in the school. I couldn't believe that. I was on there's like thousands of policies for the Board of Education. I never realized that there isn't a policy on there. They are now in the process of developing a policy for surveys. And they have had the first read. There are, I believe, 3 reads. I think next month they will get another another read on it. But what I want people to understand is that when this policy is formed and put into action, into place, that will be how it is governed. That will be how, in this particular instance, that is how surveys will be handled. There's nothing that the Board of Ed, going to the Board of Ed can do. There's nothing that any other department can do. So if you have concerns, positive or negative, it depends, whichever it is, please make sure that you let the board know or let that subcommittee know, because once they make this decision, that is the rule, that is the law. So if you have concerns, again, one way or another, whether you are for certain ways of doing this or against it, please make sure that this committee knows and that the subcommittee knows. Because again, once this is in place, that is how it's going to be. So, just want people to understand that.
All right. Any final alibis? I started to say happy holidays. I wish everybody health and joy and peace. And Ginny, one final, I'm gonna miss your shorthand very much. If anybody's ever seen her take shorthand, it's an incredible skill to have, and I'm not sure many people have that. So, but beyond that, you will be missed.
Thank you.
And I would
Thank you
like to
very
wish
much.
everyone a happy Hanukkah, a Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year.
Kwanzaa,
Kwanzaa, whatever
whatever you sell.
you do, I wish you the best in that.
Yep. And a Happy New Year.
Can I get a second on a
I'll
motion to
second.
adjourn?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, you weren't your pay.
Oh, yes. Thank you for being here, Barbara.
Yeah, thank you, Barbara.
You know,
Keeping it real, Brookfield.
the rest of what's going on. Maybe I'm still tired. And, you know, I said this before. I made Michelle.
Take care. Have a nice Christmas.
How are you?
Cassie, she left it on the phone.
Put it back here. Call her and tell her.
You should have lunch sometime. You have a few free.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
I don't think we met before.
Maybe in passing.
Nice to see you.
Yeah,
Right?
Sometimes I forget.
I'm sure with our library group that when they come in, you've seen me.
But it's like a ward.
I remember that.
Cassie's really enjoying working with you.
Well, you know, it's so interesting because I
Thank you very much.
I really appreciate it. Have a great
You're
holiday.
welcome. Yeah, same to you.
So sorry, ladies. Thank you so much for your
Thank-
time.
yeah,
I really
you
appreciate
too.
it.
Yeah.
Have a great holiday. We'll be in touch.
Okay, I look forward to the study results and kind of seeing where we're gonna go.
For sure.
All right.
For sure. Thank you.
I don't listen to him. Studies of the health of women. People, I get it, they compare physicians. I guess
Someone's got it.
They do it all over.
But you gotta give her.
There's no evidence suggesting that it either does or doesn't. Take it. Together, we both find out.
Actually, he was in there. I couldn't remember anyone before you. She was there. I've been there for like 36 years. 17 years, and I thought that was, oh my God. Oh, okay.
I'm on the zoning board. I'm generating all your work.
Oh, okay, so, zoning, right. I haven't been to a zoning commission meeting yet, but I talked to Michelle a lot about
You can come this Friday, you can go on Thursday.
I've been to planning, I've been to inland wetlands, just because we've had matters that we've had to discuss, but I was just saying to, Jack.
It's like you can come to us and say you want to build something, we say no, you go stay here. And then you say if you put a six-story building.
Let me go talk to my friend Cheryl. I saw she came to me.
There's that one town there I don't want. Me too.
Thank you for coming today.
That's my most favorite. Yeah.
We've been there twice. Yeah, Rome, we could never get enough of it.
Well, when I went to been part of my education in architecture schools, and ever since then, well, I mean, I've been there like 8 or 9 times. I would move there half of the year if I could. Or even the whole year, but I don't think anybody would be too happy about me doing that. My family would.
I would the same way, and our last name is
Oh, yeah. You're like,
They do. That's part of it.
I know.
Did you track down your house?
Oh, yes, Michael has family.
Very, very. And guess what? No control. There's nobody on the tower.
I knew.
This tower will be the only.
multi-coast. That's my favorite. I love doing that.
Yeah, what I say is that
My
grandpa, I know where everything
You should build this to track down your family. I mean, with track down because they all look just like them.
Yeah.
They all look alike. I tracked down my family in Lebanon, and there's still plenty of them.
Yeah, but you're very limited in what you can. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Not having fun right now, but
It's like E30G. It's like E30G.
I mean, really, late. Oh, they have, their currency is totally late. So you're down to devalued by 90%.
Well, they're,
I mean, they have like no electricity, hardly ever.
there's some health and safety reasons.
There's no jobs. I mean, it's really, it's very big here. I know. Right. And we complain. I mean, look, it's part of, we have a right to complain, we have a democracy, we should, but, yeah. I mean, the truth is, if you look around, where is a better place than this?
A lot of big rooms.
That's why,
Well, Italy maybe.
I know.
But they have their own.
They have their own issues.
We don't see, when we go there, it's vacation.
Yeah, right, they have their own issues over there.
And then you want, oh, I could live here, and I just,
It's just, it's so many. Well,
Get
they have a better outlook, they believe in a quality of life, that's our problem.
Oh, that's so true.
Your hamster on a wheel, if you get,
That's
you
why
get
I
off,
get off,
or you
yeah.
take a break.
No, you're right.
If you take a break, exactly.
Yeah.
You'll be-
Really good.
Oh, you're going on vacation?
Oh, John and Concept.
Yeah, I grew up in town.
Okay.
I grew up on Russ Road. Russ Road.
So we'll see you do it. Hey, oh, which one? Excuse me. What are you doing?
Wendy Road and Russ Road is Russ Road.
Okay. Oh, you, oh, okay, no, no.
Across the street is Fairfield. 2 blocks down is Easton. That's where I grew up.
So I live near Monroe on Hathaway Drive, by
I know you want those.
Oh, okay. All right, so you're like my father-in-law. Oh, good. My father-in-law lives there. He lives at Regency Manors condos. So I'm down there all the time.
There he is.
It's not the Trumbull I grew up with.
I have my papers here.
It's very rural.
Getting moved to next
They
month.
didn't have super, I grew up in Trumbull, I was born in 57, so I grew up in Trumbull and before they had Trumbull
I
Mall.
put down to it what I want to let you know. And I guess, did you stay
we had, yeah, so
narrative
the
and you
Chauncey
say,
lived
I
there.
think it's a right
Or
application.
did you
Send it a bill.
Like, we finally got what we did. There's 2 CLG grants, where there's historic preservation, and that's the one to the, I think that's the one that's it's only, it's a short form, just for the request. And then, I'll have
I
just an
didn't work all
example.
over there, but then I did my
Hire somebody to do it.
someplace like that, really.
I'm just reading the craft
first I'm
center
hearing
for the
about it.
lower house in Oh. Ohio this day.
Were
they? And everybody is qualified.
No. You know, you said anytime I agree with.
She often argues with myself.
You read it, you don't.
No.
What they wanna do.
Yeah. Oh, who's done the job?
She was here. Oh, she left here. She's from the Board of Ed, right now.
Right.
They're gonna charge you something, they have to tell you what crime you did.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing that, what is the problem, what did you do wrong?
We don't need it.
Because, I mean, that's
Now,
the most valuable.
then the process starts. Pretty,
Right, right.
you have to, it's the, like the debate.
I'm glad
An
it's
answer,
expired.
the right one.
That's the way we have it.
Take all the files.
Yeah, I know that, I think it's done, so.
Yeah, the serious.
It's okay.
They don't wanna go
But
back
it's
and forth
right.
and go